Okay. Hi, I'm here today with Dusty and Laylee, and they are up in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, and they're going to tell me their love story. So, my first question is, how did you meet?
So we met at Maxwell International Baha'i School in Shawnigan Lake on Vancouver Island. And so I was in grade 12 and Dusty was in grade 11. So
Okay, and
that's
so
where we,
you didn't know each other before then? Is that just a high school and you just transferred in?
yeah, so we didn't know each other before then. It's a high school, it's an international school. People from all over the world are there. And so I went there for grade 8, 9, and I was away for a couple of years and then went back for grade 12. And Dusty started there when I was in grade 12. He started in grade 11. Mm-hmm. And so that's initially where we met for the first time. But didn't like basically our sort of love story didn't start there. That was just basically where we met and were introduced to one another and said maybe all of 5 or 6 words to each other that whole year. Yeah.
But I remember so there's with this, it was a boarding school and both of us actually were day students. So we would come up during the day. Actually, you were there for the week. You'd go back. So Laylee was a boarder. I was a day student. So I would come up every day from Victoria. And in particular, I just remember, even though, the contact and conversations were literally at a minimal, I saw Laylee, but I remember passing her in the hall one particular day and then kind of turning around and just getting like a feeling, just some strange feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that moment too.
Yeah. So anyways, and then basically, she graduated. I was still at Maxwell for another year. And then basically being part of the Baha'i community in Victoria, which wasn't particularly large, had a lot of the same network of friends. So when we came, so basically finishing and graduating Maxwell and then coming to college in Victoria, a lot of our friends were mutual, so we started hanging out more. Okay. And this is kind of like within now three years of kind of knowing each other.
Right. So you both graduated now and you're hanging out in the same thing. But you remember that moment. What did you kind of get that feeling too? Did you get kind of?
Yeah, so the school had a breezeway basically that connected all of the dorms. Mm-hmm. Sort of covered, hall, outdoor hall breezeway. And I definitely remember that, if it's the same moment that, he's referring to, but there was a time that we were walking in opposite directions and our eyes kind of locked and I definitely got butterflies. And I feel like that was definitely the first moment that we connected, just, I guess, more on kind of the non-physical level, like there's something that happened there for sure.
Cool. Okay. So you both remember that moment. Okay. And then you started hanging out together. And then how did this turn into, like, when did you start dating?
So we started, we basically were hanging out with, same group of friends. And then it was really clear that we liked each other. So we started seeing each other. I wouldn't see, the thing is that I guess you could consider it dating. We would hang out and do activities together, and I would go over to where he was living just to hang out. But ultimately, and that was like probably 6 to 8 months of that.
Yeah, like it wasn't a super long time, but again, I guess the other thing was like one of the obviously tenets of the faith is obviously not to be intimate until obviously marriage. So chastity is quite a large part that that there's an endeavor and an understanding. So really when like she would come hang out, it would be with like also other friends.
Right.
To the house and whatnot. So it was still pretty much like more like traditional, right? Like kind of religious, you would say. principles that were being followed. So obviously the fact of wanting to hook up was clearly there, but weren't able, like we didn't, because obviously we were practicing
Abiding by your faith.
eyes, and yeah, 100%. So that was obviously one of the things that was super important to both of us. And the cool thing is, when we were getting to know each other, we would be doing service things together too, like in the community. Or so basically, like the one was, we were told from both sides of our family, my parents aren't Baha'is, but my aunt and uncle who I was living with, basically that's a whole other story, but we're Baha'is. And so I was living with them, and then I became a Baha'i while I was at Maxwell, actually. And so so in that, one of the key tenets is to investigate each other's character before obviously marriage.
Right.
So then this is kind of where we were heading towards, was investigating each other's character and just seeing, you know, if it was something, if there was really something there.
And I was,
for me, there was.
Yeah. So I was 19, I guess, at that 18 or 19 at that time. And and I wasn't interested in getting married. You know, I was just in university. And so my parents basically sat me down and said, same idea. They said, if you're not interested in getting married, then why, like, basically they said, you can't just have a boyfriend for the sake of having a boyfriend. You know, if you're interested in getting to know Dusty for the purpose of figuring out whether you want to get married to him, then that's fine. And I was 19, I was in university, I was having fun in terms of just hanging out with friends and knowing that it was just a different time. And so I basically told him that, you know, my parents were saying, like, you can't just have a boyfriend. So we broke up at that time. And so we were friends for another, I don't know, fast forward 2 or 3 years, I graduate from university, and then Dusty, you know, it was going to college, and then you can explain how you went to Vanuatu.
Yeah, and then, well, anyways, so after, I kind of remember, because we were kind of, like, we actually, truth be told, we're like, I was saying, like, I want to get married, and I'm ready, so on and so forth, and then that was probably like a little bit of too much reality for Laylee. So then shortly after that, she's like, yeah, we can't really, like.
That was when you were 19, you were ready to get married.
Yeah, basically, like 100%. But just so you know, I was actually 20, because we're about a year and a bit apart. Right. And I'm older.
Yeah.
And actually, before I went to Maxwell, I had taken a year off and I went actually for the first time to a country called Vanuatu, right, which is in between Fiji and Australia. Right. And I went to this island called Tanna. So I lived on Tanna for like about six months. And so that's the island where Survivor was on. Oh. Way back. Anyway, so, but it was like no electricity, like it was a pretty awesome time. My uncle was at the hospital. He was the doctor there with a group called QSO. So I was very fortunate that they were able to bring me to this island. So then when I was there, believe it or not, which I had no idea about the Baha'i faith whatsoever, but a lot of the population on this island were Baha'i. Okay. Which I had no idea. There was a massive Baha'i population. Anyway, so this is all new to me. So then that's where I found out about Maxwell, because my aunt worked at the school, and that didn't sound like any school I had gone to. So it was kind of exciting, and I wanted to go at that time. Anyway, so long story short, when she had told me that wasn't really interested and whatnot, it was kind of heading towards the summer. So I was planning that at that point I was in education, so early childhood education. So I did my first 2 years at actually Camosun, and then you would transfer to UVic for the remaining 3 years at that time for your degree. And I really enjoy working with kids, and at that time I was doing these children's classes. So that was one way I always thought was a good thing, because, you know, kids at a young age are impressionable, and having good role models and so on and so forth is really good.
Right.
So so as I was going on, that was one of my interests. So that's what I was doing. So before I entered the program at UVic and applied, I wanted to do a year of service. So, and many religions have that. Like you go and you work in the communities around abroad and so on and so forth. So I actually went back to I went back to Vanuatu.
Right.
And so when I went, they were asking me to help villages basically set up children's classes and lesson planning and all this other stuff. So that's what I went to do for about 7 months.
Right.
So then when I went to Vanuatu, that's basically all I did. I was incognito. I wasn't communicating with friends. I was really immersed in that task, and it was like amazing. But then when I came back, it was 1998 in basically it was 1999 in the winter, sorry. So this was kind of January I got back. And then I see all the friends and all this other stuff. And then,
So he comes back, and at this point, hadn't talked to him, hadn't heard from him. None of our friends had heard from him for like months at this time, like several months. And so he comes, and his parents live on the mainland. And so he comes over from Vancouver to Victoria to see his family. And basically at this point, he's interested in someone else.
Okay.
Oh, you said you didn't want to talk about it.
Well,
she told me before this interview not to talk about it, so I was honoring that, just so you know.
So he was interested in a very lovely young woman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was very cool.
Yeah, lovely young woman, comes and introduces her to his friends and family in Victoria, and that's the first time that I've seen him basically now in several months. And basically that's what triggered it. I realized at that moment that basically there was a chance that I think I just took it for granted that he was going to wait for me until I'm ready to get married. And then when I said I was ready, that he would always be there.
Yeah, that's a fairy tale.
And so this was the first time that I realized that, that's not necessarily the case, right?
Right.
And so very shortly after that visit, I called him and said, I want to go for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
So we go for lunch. I invite him for lunch at Pagliacci's restaurant. Mm-hmm. And I remember exactly like where we sat. And we basically have lunch and just like chit chat. And then the bill is delivered.
Right.
And I go to the washroom. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror and like giving myself a pep talk to be like, you have to tell him how you feel. And like, just like trying to build up the courage to be like, I have to tell him how I feel. And so I go back and sit down and basically just like pour my heart out and say that like, basically that I love him, that I want to be with him. And I could tell like, I think I knew how to read because Dusty can't really hide his emotions much. And so, I could like, if I could sense that he was like, oh my God, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you saying? I probably wouldn't have kept going, but I could tell that it was like a positive reaction. And so all he kept saying the whole time, all he kept saying was, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Like, that's all he kept saying. And then I kind of got frustrated by his repeated questioning of, are you sure? So then I said, I'm so sure that if you asked me to marry you right now, I would say yes.
Okay, wow. All right.
Okay, but just stop there for a second, because we've been having this debate ever since you've been married.
For 21 years, we've now had a debate about this, because he says that that's me proposing to him. And I say, no, it's not.
It's not a proposal.
See?
You're totally wrong. Both of you are wrong. That's all I'm saying.
Because by him, I was just trying to explain to him that that's how sure I am.
Yeah.
But he always tells people that I proposed to him at Pagliacci's.
No, because essentially, I'm just saying, on a guy's perspective,
I'm with you.
or most
with you.
perspective, if you say, if you ask me to marry you, I would say yes. Then obviously, like, that's just saying, like, if I asked you right now, you're gonna say yes, and basically she said yes.
But you didn't.
I didn't ask at that point. I kept on asking, "Are you sure?" But I mean, obviously, Laylee has this legal, terminology that she says, no, it's not a proposal. It was like just the invitation to treat. And that's a legal term. And I was like, you're full of it. And
It was an invitation to treat. Okay, well, I mean, because you can bring it up and it's not necessarily a proposal because, you're just discussing it. You're just saying like, look, I'm
Yes.
ready to get married. And if you're ready to get married, I'm ready.
Yeah.
I actually
Not a
think
proposal.
invitation to treat is basically like a dirty way of like a dirty terminology, basically.
No.
So, well, when did you ask her? When did you actually do the proposing? Because it didn't.
Like maybe about two. So the time frame was I get back in kind of January-ish.
Yes.
Whatever, mid or late January. This is already springtime.
Yeah, this was
Okay.
May.
This was kind of May. And so at that time,
So it was like
2 weeks after that,
it was 2 weeks later. And we basically, I had moved into a little basement suite in the Highlands, and
Right.
he had helped me bring some stuff there. And then one evening we just sat down and had a discussion about marriage and decided that we wanted to do it.
Yeah, because she actually had moved to that to Highlands because there's a smaller at that time there was a smaller Baha'i community there, so she was moving there to also help support and help with goals and the community there.
Right.
And so that was unfortunately shorter lived than expected.
Yeah, because so that was May, and we got married that August.
Wow. Okay. So that was so there was no like official I'm going to get down on one knee proposal. No. It was a discussion.
Yeah. It was a discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of legal terminology.
This was a negotiated contract.
Yeah, basically, 100%.
Yeah.
Even though she initiated the conversation, the contract.
It was like for sure that lunch at Peg's kind of started the whole thing, but everything happened so quickly, right? Because then that happened, and then 2 weeks later, it was so unexpected that 2 weeks later that one of my best friends, Neda, was living in China at that time. And she was there on like I can't remember how long, like not forever, but she was there and I hadn't seen her for a while. And so we decided to get married, and I called her and I was like, I have some news.
I graduated with this person too. Like we were friends also.
Yeah, like common friends, but she's one of my, but still to this day, one of my best friends. So I called her and I say, I have some news, I'm getting married. And she's like, to who? Like, that's how out of the blue it was, for people because we were just friends up until that point, and then he comes back. This all happens, and we decide to get married 2 weeks later. So like that's how my best friend didn't even
have an idea.
She didn't even have an idea as to like who I was getting married to.
Because I mean, one of the things I ask people is, when did you know?
Yeah.
And you kind of said you knew Laylee when you saw that he was interested in someone else, it's like, wait a minute, I'm not going to let him get away. And like Dusty, you knew right when you were 19, I guess.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, well, I would say, and again, I don't think, I don't necessarily believe necessarily in the, the doctrine of like, there's just like soulmates or like just necessarily one person for someone. Right. But I think there has to be a sense of compatibility and the fact that like a commitment to that physical and spiritual growth that a couple would have and move forward with, right? So at that point, then I was like, okay, well, you just, you get knocked down, you pick your socks up, you get up and you move on and then there's more fish in the sea.
Well, I
So,
gotta move on after she.
yeah, no,
My heart
100%.
when I
So
go
anyways, and this person was like super, like just wonderful, like also beautiful, like inside and out, and like cool family. But again, didn't necessarily have the hook in the heart as much as Laylee did. So then obviously when that happened, then there's that song, put a ring on it, or
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah.
There's no ring on it, so it was still open game. So Laylee kind of put a ring on it.
Okay. And then so you got engaged in the end of May, and you got
Yeah,
married
which is
in
very
August.
quick. And then we were married on August 17th.
Wow, that's a very quick engagement, which I mean,
Yeah, so that's another. So in the Baha'i faith, there's a couple of different requirements for marriage, and the biggest one is that you have to have the consent of your parents to get married.
okay.
And so after we decided that, then we basically met with both sides of the family and thankfully got their consent.
Right.
One of the other things, which is a Baha'i law that actually wasn't in effect, wouldn't have applied to us at that time. It does now, but engagement periods are quite short. It's 95 days.
Maximum, yeah.
Okay, really?
Yeah.
Okay,
And so, the whole idea of being engaged for years on end or spending like 2 or 3 years to plan your wedding, like that's not something that you see in Baha'i relationships and weddings. And so for us, like we had a pretty large wedding. It was over 300 people at the Laurel Point Inn here in Victoria. And I think it was the largest wedding that they had ever had to date at that.
Well, and outside.
At that facility. Yeah, like we used outside. It was beautiful, but I mean, it just goes to show you that you can have a large wedding, and it was a beautiful wedding, and you don't need like a crazy amount of time to plan it.
You don't need a year to plan it or anything else. It's just...
And the other thing is that at that point, like we just wanted to get married. Right. And so we didn't spend, all this time kind of
dwelling on things.
Dwelling on, what flowers and what cake and all of that. It was just, it was a big party. It was fairly simple.
I just had to show up.
He showed up 45 minutes late to our ceremony.
No, but I was there early, but like, you know how they say you're supposed to write your speech and all this stuff prior. Well, like, I guess I kind of procrastinated. And so I was attempting to write it in the morning, but I kept on getting kicked out of these rooms that we had. So then finally I went up to the conference center that they had on the second floor. Mm-hmm. And I'm writing it, I'm getting all into it and everything. And then the door opens and it's Laylee's uncle being like, dude, like, let's go. And so I was like, what are you talking? He's like, you're late. So I was like, shoot. So then I fumbled my speech.
45 minutes late. People would be thinking like, is he going to be a no-show at that point?
I know. So like, because wedding ceremonies, they start at a certain time. Yeah. So imagine 300 people are sitting on the hottest day of 1999.
Yeah, it was super hot.
It was like sweltering heat, which Victoria usually doesn't get, but it was a very hot day and it was outside.
Oh my gosh.
And so meanwhile, I'm just like waiting, for them to say, okay, now it's time for the music to start and for you to walk sort of down the aisle kind of thing.
The plank.
And meanwhile, and I'm not really paying attention to the time. I'm just like, it's just taking forever kind of thing. But later I find out that, it was 45 minutes late.
Oh my God.
Which everyone, if they're watching this, whoever attended that wedding, I'm very sorry. But just so you know, the heat was not even like a quarter of the heat I was feeling.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you forgot. Oh wow. Okay, so they had to go find you.
Yeah,
so they found me, and then, but anyways, it was a wonderful wedding, and like we had a routine with Ricky Martin. Like
we did a dance.
Cool. Right. Is there a video of that?
It was pretty cool. Yeah, there is somewhere. And then we had like it was pretty fantastic, like planned wedding. Like there was like, carved ice, and there was like
You must have had a lot of help
Mm.
doing it within 4 months. So you must have had a lot of
It
fun.
was really no. Okay, truth be told, it was really Laylee's parents that and family that and some of my family that like so my aunt and uncle here, but really like Laylee's family did like plan the wedding. Like I mean, they were literally exhausted the day of the wedding. And so
well, we also had like 4 weddings because leading up to that event, there was I think 3 other dinners, almost like rehearsal dinners. Back to back at other hotel venues because my family is so large and they had come from all over the world basically for this wedding and they all had to be fed. So like my grandparents hosted one evening.
Your aunt and uncle hosted another one.
Yeah. And so it was like, 100 people the night before at the Ocean Point or whatever.
Small intimate affair. It was 100 people.
No, it was like it was huge parties for a number of nights and then the wedding, which it's like almost like my big fat Greek wedding, but my big fat Persian wedding because like 95% of the guests were my side, I would say.
It was it was like basically there was I think 31 tables of 10 and 3 of them were my family.
All right.
So it was like wow.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing too, like for the consent was like my parents aren't Baha'i.
Right.
Like they respected and they and what they know of it, they I think they like, but wasn't anything in particular that they grew up around.
Right.
They knew that my aunt and uncle were like my mom's brother was a Baha'i, obviously, and my mom's sister-in-law and obviously cousins. But I think when we went to Vancouver, as much as almost the equivalent of Laylee's, telling me in Pagliacci's and me being like, are you sure? Are you sure? My mom was kind of in shock and be like, no, no. Like she couldn't believe it. So especially at that age, so she just, I mean, clearly she gave her consent, and she was happy. But I think it's the same thing. It was like so quick, so like just not like I don't even think it was even remotely close to her radar. So so other than that, it was good. But I think on my side, it was very much like crazy.
Are you nuts?
and I won't get into it, but my sister so I have 2 sisters, one from my mom's side and one from my father's side. And so because they're separate, they've been separated for forever. And so so my other sister actually did the same thing to us too.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
she went to another story, but she went to Uganda for her school like exchange program or something like that. And she called us one day and basically said she met someone and is getting married.
What? Yeah, out of the blue. So anyways, it's probably maybe that's our genes.
That runs in your side.
When they know, I guess.
Yeah. But they're happily married and they have one kid and one more in the oven, so it's pretty cool. And they're in Uganda serving humanity as missionaries, so it's pretty cool.
That's very cool. Okay, so so you had this big wedding and you knew kind of, I mean, you knew kind of when you were younger, but you weren't quite ready, and then you got back together, and so now you've had this big wedding, and now you've been together for 21 years.
Yeah.
Now it'll be 22 this August.
Okay, this August. Yeah. Nice. Okay. And so the last question I ask people is, so you've been together all these years, what advice do you have for other couples and for, just what makes you work as a couple? What makes you a successful couple?
I mean, I can answer from my perspective. 2 things that stand out for me. One is humor.
Mm-hmm.
That I think we can laugh a lot together. And secondly, and most importantly, I think the reason we have had success is because we find that I'm happiest when I am doing something of service to the community with Dusty.
Right.
So when we have opportunities of basically something that is meaningful,
Mhm.
and really that is based on spiritual qualities, so being of finding ways that our family can be of service to the community, whatever that looks like. We sometimes have had, you know, during this pandemic, it's been difficult, but we have opportunities of inviting people into our home from all walks of life, our neighbors, our co-workers, people from our children's school. But it's an opportunity for people to come together, to have meaningful conversation. We usually pick a topic. We call it usually it's called a devotional gathering. We try and share and invite people to bring things, poetry, music.
I invited Jane once, right?
Yeah, from their own sort of either spiritual background or, you know.
I did.
But you never told me the date or time.
No, I was just, you know.
Next one, yeah. But those are the times that I feel like as a family, we become closer to one another. And our relationship grows as a result. And I feel true happiness in those moments. So I think those are the time, that's what really has kept us together. Like obviously, like every other couple, there are challenges, and with kids, you know, there are tough times and there's reality, right? It's the day-to-day reality, the stress of work, kids, all of that. But I think what has kept us happy and what keeps us going is that focus on something that's bigger than us.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. The service.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I definitely agree on the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't find me funny though?
No. I think, and also not only to find humor, but also like, yeah, you can't be like, for me, I can't be serious about myself. And like, I mean, I think you have to have that expectation that we can laugh at each other without necessarily getting angry at each other, and just kind of, yeah, I mean, really for that thing, I think everyone has to find their own kind of, like marriage reality and everything. But I just know there's like, no matter what in the marriage, there's a prayer for marriage actually in the faith, but it talks about that there's essentially two seas, two bodies of water, that basically we're still, even though we're together, we're still our own individuals, and we still have to be accountable essentially to each other, but our individual relationship with the Creator is the utmost importance. So always still having that singleness, but then the other thing is that singleness comes together from a union of two souls.
Right.
So those souls have to still develop in this world, and that we always change. So I think we just, I get, if I was to have any advice, it's just being able to adapt to change, but being positive about it. And so whatever life challenges get tossed our way, we deal with it and we have that kind of support and relationship with each other that I think just helps build our characters together.
Right. So as you're growing individuals, as you know, your individual growth, you both have to adapt, because nobody's static.
Yeah.
And nobody stays the same over 21 years. You grow when you.
Well, hopefully 50. I mean, I hope we make it to 22. We'll see.
Right.
You never know. But no, honestly, like, yeah, it's great. And like, definitely over the years, we've become way better friends and all that stuff. So, which obviously is crucially important. And then, yeah, the trust and all those things develop. And
I think respectful communication is also super important. Like, you know, it's good to be candid, but at the same time, I think not letting yourself, if you're angry, sometimes taking a step back and not and realizing that the effect of your words, right?
Right.
I had to realize that with Dusty, I think early on too, because sometimes he knew himself, and he knew that he needed time before we come back, let's say, and talk about something. Whereas I'm someone that I just want to deal with things like right away.
Mhm.
and like just talk it through right away. And I had to realize that, you know what, he actually needs some, you know, maybe like an evening or
a year or whatever.
and so it's best not to press, right? Because again, you know, respectful communication, he needs a little bit more time because he knows he doesn't want to necessarily maybe say something that he doesn't, he, you know,
Yeah, you can't take
yeah,
that. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, anyways, I guess I don't have any advice really, because the best advice is not having advice, I think.
No,
But I would
but I
say
mean,
for
people appreciate it because, like, you know, there's a lot of people out there right now during the pandemic in particular who have spent a lot of time with their spouses.
Yeah.
So sharing other people's wisdom is helpful because they're like, okay, I call it the wisdom. What's your wisdom? You know, you've been together 21 years. You've got to have some
well, I would
wisdom
say,
shared.
yeah,
But
that being
respectful
said,
communication.
sorry from sort of interrupting, but I guess then if that was the case, then I think what Laylee was saying, like that relationship with the creator and having that, because it can be, again, belief can be whatever, right? People have different beliefs, but really I think their relationship, their individual relationship with the creator has to be strong. And you have to have, for me, like I would not be here, I think, if I didn't have that belief or that relationship with the creator. So I think that's, for me, that's the most fundamental. It's not trying to, and again, I'm not trying to sound fanatic. I'm just saying that's what really carries me for being able to pinpoint the important things in life. So again, not being inward focus on myself or just a child, or it's really having that fact of being able to know that things are bigger than one individual, and collectively we have to work together towards bringing really that uh, peace to the community, to our community. And so that's I think as a family unit, the importance is you have much more strength than an individual, but that family has the potential to really transform a community or a neighborhood.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the better, obviously.
Yes, for the better.
Yeah.
That's
I think
right.
that's kind of, yeah.
Okay. All right.
That's
Well,
my 2 cents.
That's your 2 cents. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you very, very much for sharing your love story. Appreciate
Yeah, that's some of it. We could go into like side stories one time.
it.